got really high profits and your people are not happy, what's coming? That's right. Okay. So what if you make your people really, really happy, but you never get your profits up again? Become a church, you get a tax advantage. Okay. Maybe you just ought to work on both sides, huh? So it's kind of like this technology. I've got a piece of business technology over here I want to show you. It's sort of like this. Remember Slinkies? Actually, it's not technically a Slinky, but it's a coil spring, and the most popular brand is called Slinky. Which side makes it work? Yeah. I mean, it's a dumb question, isn't it? Okay. So I want you to just watch the Slinky for a second. And think of the Slinky as representing profits and people, the two primary issues in a business. Okay? Profits, which is the product side, which is the system side, and all the the technical part, and people, the human side, the interactions, the relationships, the sales, and so forth. Okay? How much action does it take on my part to bring this thing to life? Notice how much actual force I have to put into it. All I'm doing is just barely moving my fingers. And yet this thing's going back and forth just fine. But if I overemphasize one side, all of a sudden it stops. And it doesn't matter which side I overemphasize. So I've got to pay attention to both. I can't neglect either. But if I overemphasize one, then I end up with a really bizarre outcome. Same thing's true in your world. Okay? And that's true for businesses that are pretty large. And that's true for tiny little operations as well. The principles transfer. They're absolutely the same across the board. So here's the leader's dilemma. Okay, a person's sitting there and they say, okay, I run my own company. I got my people. I got all my systems in place. But Jim, you're recommending I spend an awful lot of time with the people side of it. What if I put all this energy into training my people and then they leave? Valid concern. Here's a more important concern, though. What if you don't and they stay? Shudder at the thought, huh? It's not optional. I mean, we don't have the option of not training our people, of not guiding their thinking and developing the right frame of mind toward all this. It's part and parcel of leadership. It's what comes from being in a position where you can make a difference. It's a basic responsibility. But there are vital relationships we have to lead people into. For example, if the person doesn't feel connected to the organization, they always will seem like an outsider, even if they've been there 30 years. If it were possible to live that long, and it may be, that you could have been with S.P. Richards from 1848 to now, if you didn't feel a connection with the vision, the values, the beliefs of this organization, even today, after all that time, you'd still feel like an outsider, someone that didn't belong. But if you do embrace what the organization's about, you feel like family the first day. So that's one of our primary roles, is we've got to get people to embrace the organization itself, to understand it and care about it and believe in it, or go somewhere else if they don't. Okay? Second thing is we've got to make sure they understand in the overall scheme of things what's their part. Where do they fit in this matrix? They need to see how when they produce a result and it goes to the next level, what do those people do with it and how do they feel about the way they get it? And when they get something from someone else, where are they in the food chain? And how does it go back upstream, right? Also, they need to understand the technology they're dealing with and understand more than just the operation of it. They need to understand a little bit of the why that makes it that way, so they can help make it even better. Okay? If a person doesn't have a sense of purpose in what they do, they won't add much value to what they do. Would you agree with that? If you don't find much purpose in what you do, you won't add much value to what you do. Quick story. Years ago, I was in Atlanta in the airport, and I was in the food court. And I was standing there with my little coffee and muffin, and I was just watching all the people. It was really, really crowded. It was like out in the foyer this morning, you know, people everywhere, thousands and thousands of them. And I chose not to fight for a table, so I just stood back and had my little snack. And I noticed a busboy who's bussing tables, but he looks like this. Slumped shoulders, long droopy face, kind of dragging his feet. And he goes from table to table, and he picks up a tray, and he gets the trash, and he's making eye contact with nobody. Goes over, he throws away the trash, takes his rag, goes to another table. I'm getting depressed watching this guy. I'm thinking, you know, somebody ought to do something. So finally I finished my meal, and I threw away the trash, and I went over and I just tapped him on the shoulder. He recoiled. I think he thought he was going to get in trouble. I said, "Excuse me." He said, "Yeah." And I said, "What you're doing sure makes a difference here." He said, "No, sir, I did." Huh? I said, "What you're doing sure makes a difference here." I said, "Look at this place. It's jam-packed with people. If you weren't cleaning these tables, in 5 minutes there'd be trash everywhere. The place would be unsanitary, unpleasant. People wouldn't come. What you're doing matters. I just wanted to say thanks for doing it. See ya." Now, I'm walking off. He's in shock. But in the time it took me to walk about 10 feet, when I glanced back, I swear he had grown 6 inches. He didn't become serviceman. "Hey, good morning, welcome to the food court. Boy, it looks like you could use one of our bran muffins. Let me help you out here." You know, nothing like that went on. All that happened is he went from depressed to neutral. Neutral. But what do you bet for the balance of his shift? He did his work a little bit better. Fair assumption? Okay. What do you bet for the balance of his shift? He felt better about himself and handled problems a little more smoothly. Okay. What had I done? Complimented him. I acknowledged him. A guy in Seattle said, "Jim, you gave him back his dignity." Ooh, that's kind of lofty. I don't know that I did that, but here's what I did do. I pointed out the direct connection between his performance and the effect it had on other people. I pointed out the direct connection between his performance and the effect it had on other people. He knew about that, but he hadn't thought about that. He didn't think about it very often at all, I'll bet. How many times do your people think about it? How many times do you think about it in a given day? You say, "Well, given, that's the point, Jim. It's a given." Hey, when it's a given like that, I'll guarantee you it's not getting much mental energy or much emotional investment. If we don't consciously and intentionally remember and notice the purpose of what we're doing, then we tend to become bureaucratic and just get caught up in the process of what we're doing. When people don't see much purpose in what they do, they won't bring much value to what they do. It matters. It matters. Person to person. How many of you have ever seen your business suffer because two of the people in it didn't deal with each other very effectively? Get them up? Yeah, exactly. Everyone in the room. People problems are an enormous business expense. So, is it just up to you just slap them around and say, "Grow up"? I don't think so. I think it's a skill thing, it's an attitude thing, it's an inspiration thing. We need to inspire them. We need to lead them in such a way that they feel the need or the impetus to rise above that and to acquire the skills for resolving personal conflict. And also, person to self. If a person doesn't feel good about him or herself, it will show up in their work. Agreed? Absolutely. So it really pays to support and encourage personal development through your organization. We used to say, "Nah, that's their personal problem. You know, that's something, that's not job related." The heck it's not. It shows up on the job. That's job related. We're talking dollars here, right? Okay? So there are a lot of vital relationships that expand our thinking about what does it mean to be a leader, be a manager, be a director of sales, be a vice president of an organization. There's a lot to it. Organizational DNA, the genetic code of your organization, is contained in what you believe in, care about, stand for, and how you express yourself to the community. And that's the first thing people have to embrace in order to really be a part of the organization itself. I'm going to show you a little grid here that takes the two things, awareness, how you think, and performance, what you do. It's kind of fun, standing in front of a race car like this and saying the word performance. I feel like kneeling. That's nice. By the way, I really appreciate the fact that you chose silver cars to give away in the year that's the 25th year, silver anniversary of Cathcart Institute. I thought that was very thoughtful of you. Thank you. Years ago, when my marriage 25th came about, my wife Paula said, Jim, you know, our 25th is coming up. And I said, yeah, I know. That's our silver anniversary. She said, no, it's not. I said, yes, it's our silver anniversary. She said, no, it's our diamond anniversary. I said, you're right. I said, do you want to specify shape or just size? She said, size will do. Supported by baguettes. And she described what she was looking for and gave me time to save up for it, thank heavens. She said, by the way, what do you want? And I said, just wait till you get your diamond. And then we got it, and I said, all right, your turn. I want you on the back seat of my motorcycle as I tour the Alps for 16 days, 3,000 miles. She said, done. Most romantic experience we ever had. Just riding through those mountain passes and by the little villages, day after day in Austria, Switzerland, Germany, France. Oh, man. So we did it again for our 30th. A few years will be our 35th. I think we'll do it again. Boy, ain't life grand. I tell you what. Awareness and performance. How you think and what you do equals mastery. If you put it on a grid, it looks like this. The two dimensions, how you think, awareness. How you do, that's performance. Awareness ranges from ignorance to enlightenment. And if you look at that, low awareness, person doesn't know much about what they're doing. They tend to focus only on the process, just the details, the steps. They become very rigid on process. Okay? But the people who really think about it are purpose-driven. They're doing what they're doing because it matters that they do it that way. The process matters only because the purpose exists. Without the purpose, the process is just bureaucracy, as I said a while ago. Okay? So how do you get people to not be so process-focused? Talk about the reasons. Talk about the purpose. Tell the stories within your own organization of how you're impacting the customers. Because if you just hear the stories and get the testimonials from time to time, but you don't wave those flags, you don't run them up the flagpole and let everybody hear about them, they won't think about them. And if it's not in the front of your mind, it's not in the front of your performance either. Purpose. Performance. Most people only do what's required. They do. They've got no reason to do more than that, most people. So they just do what's required. But a few people are exceptional. They step beyond the requirements and do more than they have to. Now, we created through this 4 quadrants within this grid. Low awareness and low performance, that's process-driven, doing only what's required. Okay? High awareness, low performance, that's purpose-driven, but still just doing what's required. High performance, low awareness, don't think about it much, but do a lot of work, not much thought. Okay? And then high awareness, high performance, upper right-hand quadrant. Here's what the names of them are. Low awareness, low performance, I call the passenger. They're just along for the ride. Now, there's a passenger in your organization, or a passenger, if you're thinking about this in a sales context, a customer that's buying from you, low awareness, low performance, not acting on it, not thinking about it much. Do they need education to raise their awareness or motivation to raise their performance? Yes. They need both, right? Okay? A person who's a critic, someone who's high in awareness but low in performance. They talk a great game, but they become what Brian Tracy told me is an articulate incompetent. Intellectually arrogant. Okay? Do they need more awareness to make them more effective? Heck no. They need more motivation, more behavior, more performance. Okay? So you can look at this and look at the person you're dealing with and know pretty quickly whether you need to focus on action, which would be a motivation issue, or focus on understanding, which would be an information issue. High action, low thinking, that's the competitor. The competitor doesn't need more motivation, they need more education, information. And the leader, whether they're in a leadership position or not, I mean, they don't have to have anybody answering to them but themselves. To be a leader requires high awareness and high performance. With them, you don't need information or motivation to get them going. You just need to point them right and get the heck out of the way. Now, is that something you can use? Okay. The AP grid. So the world's changing more than you are. Really is. More than I am as well. So in what ways are you currently obsolete? More than you know. Same's true for me. All of us are more obsolete than we ever realized. Let me share with you something to kind of put that in context. This is a little thing that comes out each fall from Beloit College in Wisconsin. Maybe one of your customers. Beloit College sends out what they call the mindset list, and they send it to their faculty. And they say, folks, this describes how the incoming freshman class this year thinks about and sees the world. Compare it to how you see the world. The incoming freshman class this September was born in 1984. To them, an IBM Selectric is an antique. Thongs are not worn on the foot. There's always been Diet Coke. Adults have always been, it's always been impossible for them to open Tylenol. To them, one earring on a man indicates he's probably pretty conservative. Boeing has not built the 727 during their lifetime. Did you fly one? The Colts have always been in Indianapolis. Oh, sorry, Baltimore. Volkswagen Beetles have always had front engines. Ron Howard, who's that? A balding, older film director. Not Opie. Hey, don't have a clue what carbon paper is. Now, they have come up with a pretty creative definition for CC, courtesy copy. That's pretty good, I thought. Okay. Oprah's always been a national institution. Jay Leno's always been on The Tonight Show. They don't remember the Reagan era. Atari is before their lifetime. You say to them, you sound like a broken record. They say, what's a record? Honest to God. They've never heard of an 8-track. Oh, and they've certainly never seen a TV with just 13 channels. And they say, Grandpa, no kidding? You used to walk to the television? Dude. You talk about VCRs, and they say VCR. Oh, yeah, that's like Grandma's got a VCR. What's beta? What is that? Never heard the statement, where's the beef? Oh, man. Michael Jackson's always looked like a white woman. And the world's a very different thing to them than it is to us. Man, I tell you, in how many ways are we obsolete? A lot, right? A lot. Man. And so what we've got to do is constantly notice more. Intentionally pay attention to things that we weren't going to pay attention to in the first place. Like Buckminster Fuller, the man who developed the geodesic dome, considered to be the Leonardo da Vinci, the great mind of the 20th century. He used to go to a newsstand and buy whatever was in the right-hand corner. whatever magazine was up there, if it was Trucking Weekly, or if it was Waterbed World, or if it was Cosmetic Techniques for the New Age or whatever, he would buy it. And he would read something in which he was not interested, intentionally, just to stretch his perspective and get a different take on things. Pretty good exercise. We've got to notice more. We've got to constantly pay attention. Because, see, we're shifting from the industrial era, not to the information age, but the eco-technology era, where we realize the world's alive. That this organization and your own companies are living systems. So it's not mechanisms, they're organisms. They behave differently, and the industrial metaphors just don't cut it. Right? 9 to 5, forget that. We want access whenever we feel the need for access, 24/7. Lifetime learning, perpetual education is the deal. Eye contact is being supplemented by the need for skills in e-contact. How do you build trust when all you can convey is a digit? Okay? IQ is being supplemented by EQ, emotional intelligence, as one of the primary skills required for success. Always was, we just now started to notice that. And knowledge is no longer seen as power. Knowledge is universal. Access to the knowledge gives you power. Persuasion and partnering we talked about as the way people sell. Partnering is the name of the game today. You can't keep up, but you've got to stay in the game. And do-it-yourself is no longer the predominant model. It's do-it-together. It's collaboration. That's the way we work the world. And institutions don't control the information anymore. So who's in charge? Individuals. When the individuals rule, self-leadership is king. Here's a quote from Bill Clinton. Now, I got this quote directly in person in the White House in 1994. I was there for a tour with a small group. It was a group of past presidents of the National Speakers Association. By the way, yesterday I was in Orlando at the National Speakers Convention, and your upcoming speaker, Tom Wenninger, who is a very close friend of mine, and also a past president of that group, was on the program and blew them away. You are in for such a treat. Be sure and be in the room when Tom Wenninger speaks here. But we were touring the White House with our spouses, and there were about 20 of us, because our convention was in D.C. that year. And at the end of our tour, President Clinton heard we were there, and he came out to see us. Now, no matter how you vote, to meet the President of the United States in the White House, for heaven's sakes, that's a pretty big deal. Would you agree with that? Certainly it was a big deal for me, coming from Little Rock. So we met the President, chatted with him. Someone said, "We're speakers, Mr. President." But then again, so are you. He looked directly at me. He said, "Half my job's keeping people in the right frame of mind." I said, "That's a keeper." But when you think about it, isn't half your job keeping people in the right frame of mind? Really? Yeah. A big portion of everything we do involves managing point of view. A big portion of what we do involves managing point of view. And if you can't get someone to think of you as a resource that's part of their family, their network, then they'll see you as a persuader, and they'll resist, and they won't share enough information for you to accurately prescribe how you really could make a difference. Tom Wenninger may share with you the story that he was sharing with me down in Florida, where he talks about a person who was selling office products to him and approached it as selling a system, not just fulfilling some orders. Talked about the bigger reasons behind things. So half of what we do involves managing point of view. Here's a point of view that's important. Dan Burris,